and welcome to this special interview with two senior officials from the Ministry of Education, Human Resource Planning, Vocational Training and National Excellence. I'm joined today by Dr. Jeffrey Blaise, the Assistant Chief Education Officer in the Ministry of Education, and Ms. Queen Thomas, who is the Education Officer for the South District. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, schools in Dominica were closed on March 23 as Dominica fought to bring cases of the virus here under control. The Ministry of Education took education online during this period, and as we wind down the school year, we thought we would look back on the online learning initiative and look at the ministry's plans for education given the new dynamic. So I'd like to welcome with us Dr. Jeffrey Blaise and Ms. Queen Thomas, and I will start with Dr. Blaise. You know, as COVID-19 became a global issue, how did your ministry, the Ministry of Education, begin to prepare for student learning ahead of the first case in Dominica?
Well, certainly, Dionne, from the onset, we anticipated some intervention at the national level that would impact the normal functioning of the school system. And therefore, we were compelled to enact structures which would mitigate whatever challenges we would have anticipated at that time. We believe that education in emergencies is very important, and that really gives students that sort of normalizing effect, the schooling effect, put it that way, the education experience. So whatever challenges that they face, it sort of allows them to focus on something else. And that is one area where we can protect our children. You know, that's an avenue for protection, allowing them the continuity of their learning. And having that as our background, we felt that we had to do something. Fortunately, many of our teachers were already previously exposed to online platform, the Google platform, because in the years previous, we had engaged our teachers for our summer training with the Canadian Teachers Federation and IT for Dominica, where we provide them with opportunities and exposure to the Google platform. And that worked in our favor because quite a few of our teachers were already quite experienced in that area. The other area that we felt very, very important was data gathering. And we wanted to know what the landscape looked like in terms of how many students had access to the Wi-Fi and internet capabilities. We also wanted to know how many students had access to devices, as well as the teachers, how many teachers had access to Wi-Fi and devices, because that would have allowed us to tailor our programs to suit the needs within the context. Based on the data that we gathered, we realized that there were pockets of communities with limited access, and there were pockets of students from a socioeconomic point of view with limited access to devices. And that allowed us to have a three-pronged approach to the intervention. One where we had the online intervention for the students with devices and access to internet. The other one where we had students with devices with no access to internet. We were able to put some of the learning activities on flash drives for them. And that allowed them to input the learning activities on their devices if they had no internet capabilities and continue some of the learning activities in that regard. And the third aspect was for students who had no devices and no access to internet, where we allowed the schools to prepare material for students, activity sheets and educational activities. And that would have been placed in folders and distributed to the students. In some cases, the parents would report to the school to collect those folders. In other cases, the teachers or principals would deliver them to the homes. So that, in a nutshell, really allowed us to launch our initiative to ensure that we touch as many students as possible. And I remember prior to the end of the second term, we were well on the way with that. You know, we've trying out the capabilities in that respect so that we could have honed it in the third term and really get it going after the opening of school in April. And that allowed us the opportunity to really evaluate what we were doing while we were doing it and refine our our approach to ensure that we maximize the impact.
You spoke about the challenges that were inherent in the system already, but there were also benefits. How do you think the two things balance? How do you weigh the benefits against the challenges, keeping in mind that there was a constant need to keep students engaged during the period?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's important. Time and again, we mention students' aptitude for technology and and that was really an opportunity for us to engage students in that respect. I think one of the major benefits and attributes of this online initiative was the fact that students were already predisposed in terms of their interest to technology, and that made it much easier for us. We had, it was sort of an uphill battle to a certain extent to get our teachers really into it as much, because they are always persons who can be resistant to change. But this was certainly a benefit for us. The other one was that it gave us an opportunity to really monitor what was happening within the system using the technology. And one may wonder, well, how were we able to monitor what was happening? Because in a physical setting, you would go to the schools to see. But interestingly, and as my colleague might explore that a little further, the online setting gave us an opportunity at the supervision level to see exactly what was happening from a student's point of view, from a teacher's point of view, and really provide that sort of feedback to the teachers, to the system in terms of improving the capabilities. And I dare say moving forward, we are going to have to utilize a blended approach and have some sort of system where we use the technology much more than we did before. So all these are advantages to the system. In terms of the challenges, I think one of the teething issues that we had was the internet capability within the communities. And from the outset, based on our data, there was a collaborative effort between the Ministry of Education and the Telecommunications Ministry, as well as the service providers, that is Flow and Digicel, to ensure that all our schools would have gotten the internet access. And that I must compliment the service providers for that initiative, because it allowed us that by the middle of the third term to have all our schools connected to the internet, so that the service could be provided for small groups of students in communities where there was no internet access. So a lot was done during the period.
Okay, Ms. Thomas, you were one of the lead officers responsible for setting up the online learning initiative. Talk to us about the specific systems you and your team put in place to facilitate online teaching and learning during the period.
Okay, as Dr. Bless said, we were fortunate in that we had a number of teachers who were trained in the Google platform. So we used that platform, Google Classroom or Google Suite, to really advance that plan. And we were able to establish a national platform where we could have all of our schools create classrooms on that platform, which would enable us to monitor the classrooms. So that was the first thing that we were able to do. And then apart from the 500 teachers who were trained, we obviously had to look at training additional teachers, putting those things in place to ensure that teachers could get the assistance that they need to use the platform properly. So we put, I think it was 73 students, teachers actually, we appointed as leads across the island, one in at each of our schools, to really help us roll out that program or initiative at the school level. We also had the technical team put in place to support the whole creation of classrooms, and we had, I think, about four teachers who came in at the start to really help us to put the system in place, to develop the system, look at the various apps or extensions that we would need, at least those that we could identify earlier on, to help set up the system and tailor it to suit our needs in Dominica.
Dr. Blaise and I spoke about the challenges, but from a technical point of view, because you were more involved in the technicalities of setting up the system, what were some of the immediate difficulties you faced, and how were you and your team able to overcome these to make the learning experience more friendly to students and teachers?
Okay. I don't think many people appreciate how intense it gets to create over 5,000 classes, okay? So in terms of the initial challenges, that was a challenge because teachers were still within the classroom, okay? So we had to basically create the classrooms for the teachers as to not overwhelm them with too much responsibility whilst they're still teaching the students. So that was an initial challenge for us, having to start off the process and create the classrooms. The other challenge, of course, as Dr. Blaise mentioned, was the lack of internet devices, the lack of internet access, and the lack of devices, adequate devices that the students could use and the teachers could use to really roll out that initiative. And although he mentioned the lack of internet or devices within the school, remember during COVID, everybody was at home. So we also had to consider the communities where we did not have internet, and that posed a great challenge because whilst as a Ministry of Education, we could say, okay, Digicel, Flow, we need you to connect our schools. Students come from so many different places around the community. And so that posed a challenge for us to really reach each child and ensure that they not only have the devices, but the access to get online and to do their work. So these were the sort of initial teething problems, and probably the parents being trained at home and the students as well. Although we had close to 500 teachers trained before we actually initiated that program, you still find that technology was not really integrated within the classroom. So the students, they may have used, gone to the labs, learned about the computer, but to really learn online or to study online, that was something new to them. So.
Despite these teething problems, as you call them, you had a significant success with the programs,
Oh, yes.
with the program, the online learning initiative. Tell us about some of the successes and the numbers, of the students and teachers and parents participating throughout these past 3 months.
Okay, so we can say that about 99% of our teachers are online, and they supported the whole initiative. They placed content onto the platform and, ensured that, and they used different tools as well. Although we were saying Google Classroom, but they used their initiative. They looked at other platforms that they could use. I never knew, for instance, you could teach a whole class on WhatsApp. When I heard, I was like, really? They're like, yes, so apart from Zoom and Google Meet, they used other means to really get to the students. So I see that as being a great success. We had over 1,000, just about 1,021 teachers. So 99% of that's to me, that is impressive. We have about 11,000 students nationally. And to have 10,000 plus students online accessing the platform, to me, that was just, it really made me happy to see that so many children were saying, okay, well, at least let us go online, let us access the platform. So that's, I consider that to be a major success. We were able to create over 5,000 classrooms. Now, I think around late April, we realized, okay, it reached a plateau, because teachers were not creating more classes. Initially, we said schools should, at least for each class, teachers should create at least four classes, looking at the core subjects. But some of them, again, they were so creative that they were able to create one class and tailor it to suit their students and have all of the subjects, in that particular class. So students would not be going from one class to the other. As soon as they enter, everything is readily available for them. So that I think we can consider as a major success as well. For one of the key challenges we mentioned was the lack of devices. We still have not received, what we would want to be able to help the students. But the little that we had, we were able to share it around the island. So we were able to distribute about 393 devices to support schools, so that students could come in once there's internet at the school and use those devices to get their work done. We have, I said 99% of teachers on the platform. We also have 5 national physical education classrooms. I see that as a great success because the students, and I've been monitoring, so I could see that at least they are engaging in those classes, and it enabled them to step outside of the computer and engage in some physical activities, and then come back and report as to what they did. So I think that is it's important to note that as well. Yeah.
Ms. Thomas, Dr. Blaise alluded earlier to the role that teachers played in all of this, and I think it's important to focus a little bit on the teachers because they were very instrumental in the process. From where you sat in the supervision of this entire initiative, what would you say about the response of your teachers nationally to what went on over the past months?
Okay, first of all, I think we need to recognize the role that the lead teachers at the various schools played, because without them, we would not have been able to do this. And when I say leads, they really led. They took the initiative, they trained the other teachers, they trained parents, they trained students, and it was constant, round the clock. I mean, at Dionne, you would have seen some of the communications, and we know that from 6 o'clock sometimes in the day, 12 o'clock, we had this chat where we would just communicate. And they themselves would also look at what we need to add to the platform to make it more interactive, to ensure that when it's more conducive to learning. So we need to recognize their efforts in that, to really tailoring the platform to suit our needs within the education system. Teachers on a whole, they came and they supported by placing content onto the platform and ensuring that the students had work, and monitoring round the clock, because it's not like in the classroom. You cannot shut the doors and send them home. They can come on at any time. Some teachers reported being on almost 24 hours a day. Dr. Blaise would call me sometimes and say, we need to look at that. We need to look at how we can get the students to stay away for a little to give the teachers a break. But they really supported by coming on round the clock, monitoring, placing the content, the work, the assignments, and taking our advice to help to tailor the platform, because it's a work in progress. We started it, but they really took the initiative to make it what it is today.
Dr. Blaise, another major stakeholder in this entire process would have been the school principals. How did your ministry engage principals so as to derive maximum benefit from the experience?
Well, yes, certainly. There were many stakeholders, important stakeholders in the entire process. And even before we speak to the role of the principals, even the supervision and support staff in the Ministry of Education, they were charged with the responsibility to ensure that they monitored what happened within the classrooms. And they had, the officers had various access codes where they could enter into the classrooms online as a student or as a teacher, so they could see various experiences, both the teacher's experience and the student's experience. And they provided as well a lot of information and support material that could be put on the platform for students' access. So the supervision and support staff in the ministry, all our officers, curriculum officers, education officers, learning support officers, and the guidance counselors also, who are on standby on the platform to provide the services for students if needs be. But at the school level, the principal role was very significant in the entire exercise. Firstly, we embarked on a mission where principals were expected to report on a weekly basis as to what happened, what was happening at their school. So we had the numbers in terms of the access, we had the participation numbers, we had in terms of the subject areas that were pursued, in terms of teachers putting work online. So the principals had to constantly report as to what was happening. In many instances, the principals also supported us in terms of delivery of the packages to the homes. Many principals actually went to the homes when they were not finding the students online or the parents coming for the package. The principal would go to the homes and find the students and deliver the packages. Even with the flash drives, when we distributed the flash drives, they expected to await the parents at the school and give the parents. The parents would have to take along the devices, and the information would be downloaded on those devices for the parents. We also had very frequent meetings of principals. What we did, the Ministry of Education sought to engage principals as frequently as possible, both in terms of obtaining their feedback on the whole initiative, as well as providing them with information as to how they can better the experience for the students and the parents as well. One of the challenges we had as well during the exercise was that of students not only access to devices on the internet, but access time to whatever devices that the parents had at home. And as mentioned earlier, many of the parents were home and they use their devices for their own work use or personal use as well. And students were not able to access the devices round the clock. So you find that sometimes the work the feedback would be delayed and parents would tell us that as well, that they have a phone or they have a computer and they would need the computer for their own use. And sometimes you had more than one child at home. You would have 2, 3, 4 students at home. And you would have to take turns to share the device and the work. So that was a difficulty for us, and we had to advise teachers and principals to be very patient with the students, because we understand the context in which they operated, that some of them may not have readily had the access to devices. So that was a challenge for us. But safe to say, we got tremendous support from our principals at the school level. They had their challenges as well, but they overcome many of the challenges, and together we really try to make the entire process work for the benefit of the students.
Mm-hmm. You've already indicated that the ministry will look to adopt a blended approach going forward. I'm assuming that will require some training of the various, again, stakeholders, teachers, principals, and the parents. What plans do you have in place for that?
Yeah, we are approaching this from several fronts, I must say. One, we have to build capacity. We need to ensure that we have sustained training of our staff, both at the school level, at the ministry's level as well. And we also need to sensitize parents as to how they can assist their children at home. I must say from next few weeks during the summer, we're going to have a significant period of training for our teachers, IT for Dominica initiative, where teachers are going to be engaged on further knowledge sharing on the Google platform and other related platforms. But we have prepared several project proposals as well and sought assistance from various entities to allow us to both improve the experience for our teachers and students, improve the training, as well as providing hardware, software, etc. for ensuring that we continue with the approach. And as we said earlier on, even if we are going back to the physical classrooms at some point, we are going to have a component where students are going to be engaged online. One of the students, it was interesting that one student mentioned to me, "Sir, when we get back to the school, are we going to just be engaging with our device, and even if the teacher is there and the teacher is putting the work online and we are engaging with the work online while we are in the classroom?" Which was an interesting perspective from the student, that they really wanted to continue the engagement with the technology, even if they are physically in the classroom with the teachers. So we are in the business of satisfying our stakeholders. That's our primary responsibility in education, ensuring that the consultative process works and the communication is open, and our stakeholders really seem to want to continue that way, and that is how we expect it to move forward as a system, that we provide the opportunity, the access for our teachers, our students, and we build capacity in that regard. So a lot will happen in the future. So we just wait and see.
Ms. Thomas, I'm curious, as the person who is probably most familiar at this stage, in addition to the technical IT people, most familiar with the online initiative and how the online learning platforms work. How do you envision this blended approach that Dr. Blaise is talking about? How do you envision that playing out as we go forward?
If I have to speak on that, he might tell me, you know what, Queen, you tend to go on the expensive side of things. But I believe this has created an opportunity for us to really modernize the education sector, the education system. And I mean, I'm glad that it came from a student first, because that's the age that we live in. You know, they go to school and they should be able to do their work on their devices. We should have whiteboard screens and where they can interact with the technology. Teachers should really be facilitators of that process. So I would really like to see the continuation of technology, or the integration of technology into the classroom, where the students can go online, interact with even each other on the platform, and outside of the classroom, their homework, they can send in their assignments. If a student, teachers or students don't necessarily have to miss work right now. So a student is sick, they can now go online, get their assignments online, do their homework online, catch up, because the content will be placed online. So we have it in the classroom, but we also have it on the platform where learning can continue.
Dr. Blaise, as we wind down this discussion, I wanted to touch on assessments and promotion, because I know that's an area that both teachers, principals, but certainly parents would be interested in, as to how we are assessing their children given the new realities of the online learning initiative.
Well, from time we have been advocating authentic assessment, and authentic assessment is diverse in that it takes into consideration various aptitudes of students. And when I speak of authentic assessment, I'm speaking about students compiling their own portfolios and preparing the projects, and they're demonstrating capabilities, both cognitive capabilities, the physical attributes, and their skills and talents. And we have been proposing that sort of assessment regime for years. And then COVID came, and it sort of forced us to have that dispensation where we would allow students to work on their own and develop their own capabilities, and would assess those capabilities. And we have advised schools, particularly during the third term, that this was part of the modality for assessment of students, both in terms of the online experience, but also the project work, also portfolio development, and so on, and look at those. What we have sought to do as well is communicate with our principals very frequently in advising them as to how they go about ensuring that they assess students in a very fair, balanced, and objective way. We know that third term, to a great extent, was quote-unquote chaotic for the students to a certain extent, in that they had to do the online, some of them had to do folders. So there was not a level playing field. There was not constant among all the students. And because of the diverse experiences of the students, and the diverse capabilities, and the diverse levels of access, we felt that it would have been unfair to have a system where all students are assessed, at least for the third term, in the same manner. Because some students may not have access to online learning, not through any fault of theirs, so therefore you cannot penalize them. So the advice to schools would have been that we have to be very, very cautious in how we both administer the assessment, we mark the students' work, and we determine promotion of students. Students should not be disadvantaged in any way during the course of the term in terms of their work. So for instance, if a student did not have the sort of experience, the online experience that you might have expected, this should not be to the disadvantage of the student. There are other ways in which we could engage the students and ensure that they have the satisfactory output. What we also sought to tell them is that if a student benefited significantly from their online experience, it would add to the credentials in terms of the output. But if a student did not have the sort of benefit, it would not disadvantage them. We would use other methods of assessment, and we would be very, very, very careful in terms of decision for promotion, because we really should, or I should say repetition, because we really should not disadvantage students in any way during the third term. So I expect that schools will be very cautious in terms of decision making in that regard, and then the students would be given the benefit of their output during the first and second term and so on, and some of it during the third term in terms of a decision making in that regard.
Can I add to
Yeah,
yes.
quickly.
So for the third term, I think he just forgot to mention that we're looking at qualitative, the qualitative aspect of it as well, where teachers report on the students' competence and mastery during that period.
Yes,
All right.
certainly.
And Dr. Blaise, I'm going to give you the final word, and I want us to look ahead. Is your ministry working on guidelines to guide the reopening of schools we anticipate in September?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. We have prepared comprehensive guidelines for the different, how should I say it, for whatever scenarios, yes, in terms of the reopening of schools. We have submitted the guidelines for consideration. I'm sure that the guidelines will be with respect to different stakeholders within the system. So the guidelines are very comprehensive. They encompass all the stakeholders. But at some point, we would have to break it up and provide separate guidelines for the parents, for the students, and teachers and principals, and so staff of schools. But safe to say that we have prepared guidelines. We have considered various scenarios in terms of the reopening of schools. One of the areas that we have also looked at in our guidelines is how do we compensate for the loss of time that in some cases that we may have had in terms of students' access to the learning experience. So we would have a lot of remedial work to do, to a certain extent in the first few weeks of school, for the students who may not have had the sort of benefit of the experience. So they have been prepared, and at some point they will be shared with the public based on approval and so.
Thank you so much to the Assistant Chief Education Officer in the Ministry of Education, Dr. Jeffrey Blaise, and the Education Officer for the South, Ms. Quinn Thomas, for joining us today. We do wish you great success going forward with the reopening of schools and teaching and learning online and in the classroom, the blended approach that you speak of. Thank you so much, and thank you for joining us. Goodbye.